I have to see what's in that bag.
Why?
What are you looking for?
At my husband Richard's funeral, while I was still standing beside his casket, a nurse pressed a sealed pharmacy bag into my trembling hands. "Debra," she whispered, "these are the heart pills he was supposed to take during his final 3 months. Every bottle is still full." Before I could ask what she meant, my daughter Melissa appeared beside me. The moment she saw the bag, the color drained from her face. "Give that to me, Mom," she demanded, reaching for it. "You don't understand what you're holding." But I understood one thing clearly. My daughter was not looking at her father's medicine with grief. She was looking at it with fear. Before I tell you what I discovered, please like this video and subscribe if you believe family secrets should never be buried with the dead. Tell me in the comments, would you trust your own child in that moment? And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want to know who is sharing this story with me tonight. By the time I returned home from Richard's funeral, the sky had turned the color of wet cement. Our house stood at the end of a quiet street outside Dayton, Ohio. Richard and I had lived there for 38 years. Every room carried some part of him. His reading glasses rested beside the recliner. His brown work jacket still hung near the kitchen door. A half-finished crossword puzzle lay on the coffee table. The house looked exactly as it had 3 days earlier. That was what hurt the most. Everything was still there, except the man who had made it feel alive. I stepped inside with the sealed pharmacy bag hidden beneath my black coat. Melissa followed closely behind me. Brian came in carrying a tray of food someone from church had prepared. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," Melissa said. Her voice sounded gentle, but her eyes dropped immediately to my hands. "It'll be fine," I told her. "No, Mom. You're exhausted," I said. "It'll be fine." Melissa paused. She was not used to hearing firmness in my voice. During the months after my hip surgery, I had depended on her for almost everything. She had handled groceries, appointments, banking, and Richard's medication schedule. I had thanked God for having such a helpful daughter. Now I could not stop seeing the fear on her face when Olivia gave me that bag. Brian set the food on the kitchen counter. "Your daughter is only worried about you, Debra," he said. "This is a lot for anyone." "I know." Melissa removed her coat but did not sit down. "What did the nurse say to you exactly?" The question came too quickly. I lowered myself into Richard's recliner and placed my purse beside my feet. "She said those were some of your father's medications." "Some medications?" Melissa asked. That's all?" She studied my face. "And she gave you nothing else? Like what?" "I don't know. Papers? Notes? Medical records?" Brian opened a cabinet and took out 3 glasses without asking. He knew our kitchen well. For years I had considered that comforting. That evening, it felt like an invasion. Melissa sat across from me. "Mom, those bottles don't prove anything," she said. Dad hated taking pills. You know that. Richard had never liked medication, but he had never been careless with his heart. After his first cardiac episode 12 years earlier, he set alarms on his watch so he would not miss a dose. "He took what his doctor prescribed," I said. "Not near the end." Her answer was immediate. "He was confused," she continued. "He hid things. Sometimes he refused to swallow the pills. I didn't want to upset you while you were recovering. I stared at her. You never told me that. You had just had major surgery. Dad made me promise not to worry you. That sounded believable. Richard had always protected me sometimes too much. Still, something in Melissa's story felt rehearsed. Brian handed me a glass of water. Grief can make ordinary things seem suspicious, he said. Maybe the nurse was covering herself. She could be worried someone will blame her. Melissa nodded quickly. That's probably exactly what this is. She reached out her hand. Give me the bag, Mom. I'll take it to the pharmacy tomorrow and have them dispose of everything properly. I looked at her open palm. At the funeral, she had tried to take the bag before she even knew what Olivia had said. Now she was pretending this was about safe disposal. I already put it away. Her hand remained frozen between us, where I don't remember. Her eyes narrowed for half a second. Then she smiled. You don't remember I've had a difficult day. Brian and Melissa exchanged a glance. It was brief, but I saw it. Melissa moved closer and placed her hand on my knee. That's why you need us, she said softly. You've been forgetting things lately. The words unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Since my surgery, I had forgotten small things. I had misplaced my keys. I had once left a load of laundry in the washer overnight. Another time, I wrote the wrong date on a check. But those were ordinary mistakes, weren't they? I am tired, I said. I want to sleep. Melissa sighed. All right, we'll stay in the guest room. No. Mom, I need to be alone. Her face tightened. For one night, she said. At least let us stay until morning. I appreciate the offer, but no. Brian touched her shoulder. Let's give her some space. Melissa looked toward the hallway that led to our bedroom. For a moment, I thought she might ignore me and begin searching the house. Then she stood. We'll call first thing in the morning. At the door, Brian turned back. Debra, did Olivia say whether she kept copies of anything? There it was again. Not concern about my health. Not grief over Richard. Evidence. No, I said. She gave me old medicine. That was all. After they left, I locked the deadbolt and watched their car disappear down the street. Only then did I take the pharmacy bag from beneath my coat. My hands shook as I examined the bottles at the kitchen table. Richard Nelson. His name appeared on every label. The medications had been prescribed over the final 3 months of his life. Some bottles were still sealed. Others had been opened but remained nearly full. I remembered Melissa standing in our kitchen each morning, shaking pills into a small plastic cup. Dad took everything she would tell me. Sometimes I had heard Richard coughing afterward. Sometimes I had seen him sleeping for hours in the middle of the day. I had assumed his heart was failing. I placed the bag inside the bottom compartment of my old sewing cabinet. Then I covered it with folded fabric and a box of wooden buttons Melissa had never cared about. The house became painfully quiet. I went to our bedroom, but could not bring myself to lie on Richard's side of the bed. His pillow still carried the faint scent of his aftershave. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. No answer came. Near midnight, I opened his bedside drawer, searching for anything that might explain the medicine. There were batteries, reading glasses, receipts, and the small Bible his mother had given him when he joined the Navy. When I lifted it, I heard paper scrape against wood. A folded note lay underneath. My name was written across the front. Debra. I recognized Richard's handwriting immediately. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. Debra. If Olivia gives you the medicine, do not trust the first person who asks you to hand it over. Please forgive me for not telling you sooner. I was trying to protect you, but I may have made everything worse. There is more. Start with Olivia. R. For several seconds, I could not breathe. Richard had known Olivia would give me the medicine. He had known someone would try to take it, and he had known he might not be alive to explain why. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. I froze. The sound came again, slow, deliberate. I folded Richard's note and slipped it inside my sleeve. Then I reached for the heavy brass lamp beside the bed. "Who's there?" I called. No one answered. I stepped into the hallway and saw the back door standing slightly open. Cold air moved through the kitchen. I was certain I had locked it. On the floor beside the sewing cabinet lay one of my wooden buttons. Someone had been inside the house, and they had been searching for the medicine. I didn't sleep for more than 20 minutes that night. I checked every window, every door. Nothing else appeared to be missing. The pharmacy bag was still hidden inside the sewing cabinet, exactly where I had left it. Whoever had entered my house had searched the cabinet but apparently hadn't looked beneath the old fabric and sewing supplies. Richard's note remained tucked safely inside my robe pocket. Still, one question echoed through my mind. Who had opened my back door? I called the county sheriff's office just after sunrise. A deputy arrived 40 minutes later. He walked around the yard, examined the lock, and shined a flashlight around the back porch, even though the sun was already high. "There are no clear signs of forced entry," he finally said. "I locked that door. I'm not saying you didn't. Someone was inside." He nodded politely. "It's possible. But without fingerprint security footage or missing property, there isn't much we can investigate." He handed me a business card before leaving. "If anything else happens, call us." I thanked him. The moment his patrol car disappeared, I locked the door again. I no longer felt safe inside the house Richard had built with his own hands. Around 9 that morning, my phone rang. Melissa. I stared at the screen until it stopped. 30 seconds later, she called again. I answered. "Good morning, Mom." Her voice sounded cheerful. Too cheerful. "Morning. Did you sleep?" "Not much." I figured. Brian and I were thinking about bringing breakfast. "No, thank you." There was a short silence. "Mom?" "Yes?" "Did you ever remember where you put Dad's medicine?" "No." "You really don't remember?" "I told you yesterday." Another pause. "Okay," she said. "Call me if you think of it." "I will." She hung up before I could say goodbye. She wasn't checking on me. She was checking on the pills. Richard had been right. I waited another hour before taking his note from my pocket. Start with Olivia. Those 3 words had become my only direction. I found the phone number Olivia had written on the back of her business card months earlier when Richard first entered home care. My finger hovered over the call button. What if Richard had misunderstood everything? What if grief was making me suspicious? Then I remembered Melissa's face at the funeral. Fear, not sadness. I pressed the button. Olivia answered on the second ring. "This is Olivia Brooks." "It's Debra Nelson." She became quiet immediately. "I've been hoping you'd call. I think someone broke into my house last night." "What?" "They searched my sewing cabinet." "Did they take the medicine?" "No." I heard her release a long breath. Thank God. I found a note Richard left for me. Another silence. What did it say? "He told me to start with you." Olivia spoke softly. "Can you meet me?" "Where? Not your house? Not yours either." "I know a small diner about 20 miles outside town." "When? An hour." "I'll be there." I drove alone. Every few minutes I checked my rearview mirror. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I wasn't. The silver SUV behind me turned whenever I turned. Only after I pulled into the diner parking lot did it continue down the highway. I sat near the back, where few people would notice us. Olivia arrived carrying a worn leather folder. She looked exhausted. Dark circles framed her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said before she even sat down. "For what?" "For not doing more while Richard was alive." I waited. She folded her hands together. "I've wanted to tell you the truth for months." "Then tell me." She looked around the restaurant before lowering her voice. "When I first started caring for Richard, everything seemed normal." I nodded. "Then your hip surgery happened?" "Melissa helped us. She took over everything." Olivia opened her folder. Inside were copies of medication schedules. "I visited 3 mornings each week." I remember. The first few visits, Melissa always greeted me before I reached Richard. Olivia looked directly at me. She always said exactly the same thing. What did she say? "Dad already took his morning medication." I felt my stomach tighten. At first, I believed her. She slid a paper toward me. Then I started checking the pill bottles. The page contained handwritten notes besides several dates. The counts weren't changing. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "If Richard had taken 1 heart pill every morning, the bottle should have had fewer tablets every visit." "It didn't." "No. The pills stayed almost exactly the same." I looked down at the papers. There were days when no pills disappeared at all. I whispered, "My God. I thought maybe he was hiding them." "Were you able to ask him?" "The first few times, Melissa never left us alone." She took another document from the folder. Then one afternoon, she stepped outside to answer a phone call. Olivia's voice became quieter. "Richard grabbed my wrist." I could almost see him doing it. He said, "Please don't argue with Melissa while she's here." Tears filled my eyes. "What else?" "He told me she had taken control of his medications." I closed my eyes. "He said she insisted on giving him every pill herself." "Why?" "He didn't know." Olivia hesitated. "He also said she had taken over the online banking." I remembered how grateful I had been when Melissa offered to pay our bills while I recovered. I thought she was helping. So did Richard, at first. Olivia reached into the folder again. "He told me something else." I leaned closer. "He said Melissa kept telling him you were showing signs of dementia." I stared at her. "No. She said you forgot conversations." "I never did." "She said you couldn't manage money anymore." "No." "She said eventually you'd have to move into assisted living." I shook my head. "No, Richard never mentioned any of this." "He didn't want to frighten you." I covered my mouth. "He said if he fought Melissa, she'd make sure you were declared mentally incompetent." The words hit me harder than anything else. Richard hadn't stayed silent because he was weak. He had stayed silent because he thought he was protecting me. "I filed a report with my supervisor," Olivia continued. "You did?" "Yes." "What happened?" "They reviewed the case." She looked down. "They interviewed Richard." "Then why didn't anyone stop it?" "Melissa insisted on being present." My heart sank. Olivia nodded slowly. "Richard denied everything." "Why would he do that?" He looked at me while he answered. She swallowed hard, and I knew he was lying. My eyes filled with tears. "He said no one was mistreating him. He was protecting me." "Yes." "Didn't your supervisor believe you? There wasn't enough evidence." She pulled out one final document. The case was closed. For several moments, neither of us spoke. The waitress quietly refilled our coffee cups before walking away. Finally, I asked the question that terrified me most. Olivia, she looked up. Why would my own daughter keep Richard from taking his heart medicine? Olivia slowly shook her head. I don't know. She hesitated. But I know one thing. What? Richard believed this wasn't about his health? What did he think it was? He looked me straight in the eye. I held my breath. And he said... Olivia's voice barely rose above a whisper. If anything happens to me, don't let Melissa convince Debra it was an accident. My coffee cup slipped from my fingers. It shattered across the diner floor. I drove home from the diner with one thought repeating inside my head. Follow the money. Richard had trusted Melissa with our finances after my hip surgery. I had trusted her because he trusted her. Now, both of us had paid the price. The moment I walked through the front door, I locked it behind me and carried my laptop to the dining room table. Richard had always handled our savings. After my surgery, Melissa insisted online banking would be easier. Mom, you don't need to worry about passwords anymore, she had said. I'll take care of everything. At the time, it had sounded like love. Now it sounded like control. I opened our checking account first. Nothing unusual. Then I opened our savings account. I froze. The balance was far lower than I remembered. No? I refreshed the page. The number didn't change. I opened the transaction history. Transfer after transfer. $3,000. $5,000. $2,500. $4,000. The dates stretched back almost 18 months. My hands began shaking. I reached for an old file cabinet beside the desk. Richard never threw away bank statements. Within minutes, I had spread nearly 2 years of paperwork across the dining room table. One by one, I compared them with the online records. Every missing dollar had disappeared after my surgery. Every transfer happened while Melissa was managing our bills. I grabbed a calculator. When I finished adding everything together, I stared at the total. $86,412. I whispered the number aloud. 86,000. I couldn't breathe. Richard and I had worked our entire lives for those savings. He drove the same pickup truck for 16 years. I clipped coupons. We skipped vacations. We planned carefully because we wanted security in retirement. Someone hadn't just taken money. Someone had stolen decades of sacrifice. I looked closer at the transfers. Several had gone into accounts I didn't recognize. Others listed only electronic payment numbers. One transaction caught my attention. Lakeview Senior Transitions. The payment repeated every month. $800. 9 months in a row. I frowned. I had never heard of Lakeview. I searched the name online. Within seconds, the website appeared. Senior living, memory care, assisted living. My stomach dropped. I immediately called the number. A cheerful woman answered. Lakeview Senior Transitions. This is Karen. My name is Debra Nelson. How may I help you? I found several payments from my bank account to your company. She typed for several seconds. Could you verify your address? I did. Another pause. Oh, yes, Mrs. Nelson. You found my account. Yes. I've never been to your facility. Silence. Then Karen spoke more carefully. According to our records, your daughter has been working with us. My daughter? Melissa Carter. I closed my eyes. What exactly has she been doing? She placed a reservation deposit. When? Karen checked again. 9 months ago. 9 months. The same month the payments began. A reservation for what? A memory care suite. I gripped the edge of the table. My name is on that reservation. Yes, ma'am. My voice almost disappeared. I never authorized that. Karen sounded uncomfortable. I assumed your daughter had discussed everything with you. What exactly did she tell you? Another pause. She said your memory had been declining. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She said you had early-stage dementia. No. She explained your husband was struggling to care for you. No. And she wanted everything ready before your condition became worse. My heart pounded. Was there a planned move-in date? Karen hesitated. There was. When? The week after your husband's funeral. The room started spinning. Melissa hadn't planned to help me after Richard died. She had planned to remove me. I forced myself to keep talking. Did she provide medical records? She said those would come later. Anything else? Karen looked through the file. She asked several questions about guardianship. My throat tightened. What kind of questions? She wanted to know how families usually gained authority over a resident's finances. I felt physically sick. Karen continued quietly. She also asked whether residents with dementia could remain involved in banking decisions. I couldn't listen anymore. I'm sorry, I whispered. I need copies of everything. We can provide them if you submit identification. I'll do that today. When the call ended, I sat perfectly still. The house felt colder than ever. Melissa hadn't made a terrible mistake. She had built a plan, a detailed plan, months before Richard died. I picked up one of the bank statements again. Every transfer suddenly looked different. Not random, purposeful, organized. I searched through the remaining paperwork. Another payment appeared, then another. Not just Lakeview, a moving company, a home appraisal, a legal document preparation service. My chest tightened. She wasn't preparing for my future. She was preparing to take my future. The phone rang. Melissa. Again. This time I answered immediately. Mom, what do you want? She sounded surprised. I wanted to check on you. I just spoke with Lakeview. Silence. Long silence. Finally, she laughed softly. Oh. So, you found out. You reserved a memory care room for me. I was planning ahead. You told them I have dementia. You've been forgetting things. I do not have dementia. You don't know that. Her calm voice frightened me. Melissa, I'm your daughter. I know. I'm trying to protect you. No. I watched Grandma decline. I don't want that happening to you. My doctor has never diagnosed me with dementia. You should probably get evaluated. The words sounded rehearsed, almost practiced. Why were you asking about controlling my finances? I wasn't. The facility says you did. She didn't answer. Instead, she changed the subject. Mom? What? Who's been talking to you? No one. Was it that nurse? I said no one. She sighed. I hope you aren't letting strangers fill your head with lies. I found the bank transfers myself. Another silence. Then her voice became sharper. Dad knew about the money. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. He left me a note. The words escaped before I could stop them. Immediately, I regretted saying them. A note? Her voice changed completely. What note? I didn't answer. Mom? Silence. Mom, what did Dad write? I ended the call. Within seconds, she called back. Then again. Then again. I turned the phone off. An hour later, there was a knock at my front door. I looked through the peephole. Melissa stood outside alone. She wasn't crying. She wasn't worried. She looked determined. I didn't open the door. She knocked again. Mom? I remained silent. I know you're inside. Still nothing. Finally, she spoke loudly enough for me to hear through the wood. Whatever Dad left. She paused. It isn't telling you the whole story. My heart pounded. She knew Richard had left something. How? Another knock. I just want to help. I stayed frozen. After several minutes, I heard her footsteps walk away. Only when her car disappeared did I open the curtains. A white envelope rested on the welcome mat. I waited another 10 minutes before picking it up. There was no stamp, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One sentence. Typed, "If you keep digging, you'll lose more than your husband." For a moment, I couldn't move. This wasn't about money anymore. Someone wanted me afraid. Instead, I became determined. I didn't call the police about the anonymous note. Not yet. Whoever left it wanted one thing. Fear. If I reacted too quickly, Melissa would know I had started connecting the pieces. Instead, I did something she would never expect. I acted normal. The next morning, I called her. She answered before the first ring finished. "Mom, I've been thinking." "I'm glad. Maybe you were right." Silence. "About what?" "I've been under a lot of stress." Her voice softened immediately. "I know you have. Maybe grief is making me suspicious." "I understand. I'd like you to come over. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Exactly what I expected. She wasn't coming because she missed me. She wanted to know how much I knew. While waiting, I gathered every document from the dining room table. Bank statements, Lakeview records, the anonymous letter, Richard's note. I placed them inside a locked briefcase and hid it beneath the floor of the bedroom closet. Only Richard and I had ever known about the loose floorboard. Melissa arrived, carrying blueberry muffins. She hugged me longer than usual. "I'm so relieved you called. I've been thinking about everything you said." She smiled. "I just want to help." We sat in the kitchen. For several minutes, we talked about ordinary things. Neighbors, church, the weather. Then she looked directly at me. "Mom?" "Yes? Have you found Dad's medicine yet?" There it was again. Always the medicine. "No." She nodded slowly. I was worried. "Why?" "I don't want you upsetting yourself." "I appreciate that." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I love you." "I love you too." The words hurt more than I expected, because I still meant them. She was my daughter. The little girl Richard had carried on his shoulders. The teenager whose college tuition we had worked overtime to pay. The young woman whose wedding Richard cried through. How had we ended up here? Melissa reached into her purse. "I brought something." She handed me a folder. Inside were medical forms. "I found these while cleaning Dad's office." I looked at the first page. It stated that Richard believed I was beginning to experience memory problems. The second page recommended Melissa assist with financial decisions. The third page included Richard's signature. I stared at it. Something felt wrong. Melissa watched my face carefully. "Dad worried about you. He never mentioned this. He didn't want to embarrass you." I traced the signature with my finger. Richard's name looked right, but somehow, it didn't feel right. His signature usually flowed smoothly. This one looked slow, almost shaky. "When did he sign these? A few months ago?" "Where?" "At home." "Who witnessed them?" "I don't remember." Brian walked through the front door carrying grocery bags. "I picked up lunch," he said. His smile disappeared when he saw the paperwork. "Oh," Melissa answered before I could speak. "I was just showing Mom what Dad wanted." Brian looked uncomfortable. You found those? I had forgotten about them. Forgotten. Something about his answer caught my attention. Melissa quickly changed the subject. We're making soup. As Brian unpacked groceries, I quietly slipped one page from the folder beneath my notebook. Melissa didn't notice. She believed she had convinced me. After lunch, they finally left. The moment the front door closed, I drove across town. There was only one person I trusted enough to ask. Helen Morris. She had managed the local bank branch for almost 30 years before retiring. More importantly, she had watched Richard sign hundreds of documents. She knew his handwriting as well as anyone. Helen welcomed me into her small brick home. Debra. She hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry about Richard. So am I. We sat in her sunroom overlooking the backyard. I handed her the paper. I need your opinion. She adjusted her reading glasses. What am I looking for? Richard's signature. She studied it quietly. Then she asked a question that surprised me. Do you believe he signed this? I don't know. Helen opened a drawer and removed an old folder. She smiled sadly. I still keep copies of signature cards from longtime customers. A few moments later, she placed one beside the medical form. Richard's original bank signature. She compared them silently, then again. Finally, she looked at me. Something isn't right. My heart skipped. What do you see? She pointed to several letters. Richard always wrote the R in one motion. I nodded. Here. She tapped the medical form. It's 2 separate strokes. She pointed again. The pressure changes. I leaned closer. I don't understand. When someone naturally signs their name, the pressure varies smoothly. She traced the signature with her finger. This one hesitates. You mean... It looks like someone was copying another signature. I stared at her. You think it's forged? I'm not a forensic examiner. But if this came across my desk while I was still managing the bank... She looked me directly in the eyes. I would reject it. I felt my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Helen asked quietly, Where did you get this, my daughter? Her expression changed immediately. Oh, Debra. I told her everything. The medicine, Olivia, the missing money, Lakeview, the anonymous letter, Richard's note. Helen listened without interrupting. When I finished, she remained silent for nearly a minute. Then she stood and walked to a filing cabinet. She removed an envelope. I wasn't sure if I should ever tell you this. What is it? She handed me a photocopy. It was a power of attorney request. Richard's name appeared at the top. It came through the bank about 6 months ago. I've never seen this. I refused to process it. Why? The signature bothered me. My hands started shaking. What happened afterward? Melissa became very angry. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She said Dad was too sick to come in personally. Helen looked down. I told her I needed to speak with Richard directly. Did you? Yes. What did he say? Helen's eyes filled with sadness. He sounded frightened. My chest tightened. He told me. She paused. That he wasn't ready to sign anything. So he refused? Yes. What did Melissa do? She never came back. Everything suddenly connected. The forged medical forms, the bank transfers, the Lakeview reservation. Melissa hadn't started planning after Richard died. She had been trying for months, maybe longer. Helen reached across the table. You need an attorney. I know. And Debra? Yes? Stop meeting Melissa alone. I nodded. I mean it. I understand. As I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about one question. If Melissa had forged Richard's signature once, how many other documents had she forged? When I reached my driveway, I noticed something unusual. Brian's truck sat across the street, empty. I looked around. No sign of Brian, no sign of Melissa. Then I noticed my front door. It wasn't fully closed. It stood open, just an inch. For 3 long seconds, I remained inside my car. My front door stood slightly open. Brian's truck was still parked across the street. The engine was cold. No one was inside. I reached for my phone and dialed 911. This is 911. What's your emergency? My name is Debra Nelson. I kept my voice low. I think someone may have entered my house. Are you inside? No. Stay where you are. Within 7 minutes, 2 deputies arrived. They searched every room, every closet, the basement, the attic. Nothing. No one's here now, one deputy told me. What about the truck across the street? They checked. It belonged to Brian. The keys weren't inside. The deputy looked at me. Do you want to call him? No. When they finished, they walked through the house with me. Nothing looked disturbed. Until I entered my bedroom. The closet door stood open. My heart stopped. I hurried toward the loose floorboard. Still there. I knelt, lifted it. The briefcase remained hidden beneath. I opened it immediately. Everything was inside. Richard's note. The bank records. The Lakeview paperwork. The anonymous letter. Nothing had been taken. I looked around the room. If they weren't looking for these, what were they looking for? Then I noticed something small. Richard's old workshop key was missing from the hook beside the closet door. Only that key. Nothing else. The deputies finished writing their report and left. I locked every door again. This time, I added 2 chairs beneath the back doorknob. I no longer cared if it looked foolish. That evening, I stood in the backyard staring toward Richard's workshop. A small wooden building. He had spent thousands of hours inside it. Repairing furniture, building birdhouses, making toys for neighborhood children. After his heart became weaker, he spent less time there. But almost every Saturday morning, he still walked out carrying a cup of coffee. Sometimes, he stayed for hours. I suddenly remembered something. About 3 months before he died, Richard replaced several loose boards in the workshop floor. At the time, I had teased him. Nobody is going to inspect your floor. He smiled. Some things are worth fixing before they're broken. I had laughed. Now those words sounded completely different. I grabbed a flashlight. The workshop smelled exactly as Richard had left it. Sawdust, motor oil, fresh cedar. His old radio still rested on the shelf. His reading glasses sat beside a measuring tape. I slowly walked around the room. Everything appeared ordinary. Workbench, cabinets, tool chest. Then my eyes stopped on the floor. One plank looked newer than the others. My pulse quickened. I found a pry bar hanging beside the workbench. My hands shook as I lifted the board. Nothing. Only dirt. I almost laughed at myself. Then the flashlight reflected off something metal deeper below. I reached down. My fingers touched cold steel. A small metal cash box. Locked. I pulled it free. It was heavier than I expected. For several minutes, I searched the workshop for a key. Nothing. Then I noticed Richard's favorite hammer hanging above the bench. The wooden handle looked slightly thicker near the end. I twisted the cap. A tiny brass key fell into my hand. Tears filled my eyes. You knew I'd find this. The lock clicked open. Inside lay several neatly organized folders, everyone labeled in Richard's handwriting: bank, medicine, letters, evidence. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. The first folder contained photocopies of bank statements. Every transfer Melissa had made was highlighted in yellow. Beside each one, Richard had written short notes. Didn't approve. Never discussed? Asked Melissa. No answer. The second folder held medication charts. Each day, Richard had written whether he actually received his prescribed pills. Many entries simply read, "Not given." Others were even worse. Melissa said doctor changed prescription. No pills today. Too sleepy to argue. I covered my mouth. Richard had been documenting everything. The third folder contained a handwritten letter. It began with my name. Debra, if you're reading this, it means I ran out of time. Please don't blame yourself. None of this is your fault. I tried to handle it quietly because I believed protecting you mattered more than protecting myself. I was wrong. My tears blurred the page. Richard continued. Melissa started controlling our money after your surgery. At first, I believed she was helping. When I questioned the missing transfers, she became angry. She told me if I didn't stop asking questions, she would convince everyone you had dementia. She said she'd move you into a facility and sell our home. I looked toward our house through the workshop window. He had known everything. The letter continued. I planned to meet an attorney, but my health got much worse before I could. If something happens to me, don't let anyone destroy these papers. Then came one sentence that made my blood run cold. I no longer believe my illness is getting worse by itself. I folded the letter carefully. There was one item left inside the box, a small flash drive. I hurried back to the house. My laptop recognized it immediately. Several audio files appeared. The first recording lasted only 30 seconds. I pressed play. Richard's voice filled the room, weak, breathing heavily. Melissa, where are my heart pills? Then Melissa answered, cold, controlled. You'll take what I give you. My doctor. Your doctor doesn't understand what this family needs. Silence. Then Richard whispered, I need my medicine. Melissa laughed softly. No, Dad. The recording ended. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the computer. I opened the second file. Richard sounded even weaker. I don't want this. Melissa replied, You don't have a choice. What are you giving me? It'll calm you down. I don't want it. If Mom hears you yelling, she'll worry. Long silence. Then Richard whispered, Please. The recording stopped. I stared at the screen. These weren't arguments. They were evidence. Real evidence. I opened another recording. Richard spoke first. If anything happens to me. His breathing became uneven. Someone has to know. Footsteps echoed. Then Melissa's voice. Who are you talking to? The recording ended abruptly. There were 7 files altogether. Each one revealed another piece. Melissa deciding when Richard could take medication. Melissa refusing to answer his questions. Melissa reminding him that I depended on her. The final recording lasted only 12 seconds. Richard whispered, Debra deserves the truth. Then I heard Melissa shout from another room. Dad. The file cut off. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time since Richard's funeral, I wasn't guessing anymore. He hadn't imagined any of it. He had spent his final weeks collecting proof. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Hello? A man's voice spoke quietly. Mrs. Nelson? Yes. My name doesn't matter. Who is this? I saw someone leaving your workshop this afternoon. My heart skipped. What? They were too late. I stood up. Who was it? I couldn't see clearly. Please. The man hesitated. But I recognized the car. My grip tightened around the phone. It belonged to your daughter. The line went dead. I didn't sleep that night either. Richard's recordings played over and over in my mind. Dad, you'll take what I give you. I need my medicine. No. Every word sounded colder each time I heard it. At 6 the next morning, I drove to Olivia's house. She opened the door before I reached the porch. You look exhausted. I found something. She stepped aside immediately. Come in. I placed Richard's metal box on her dining room table. Without saying a word, I played one of the recordings. Olivia covered her mouth. Oh, Richard. When it ended, she wiped tears from her eyes. I knew something was wrong. But not this. There are more. I played another, then another. When the final recording stopped, neither of us spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Olivia said, These recordings could change everything. I hope so. She looked through the folders Richard had prepared. He documented everything. I know. She stopped at the medication charts. Her expression changed. Wait. What? She pointed to several dates. I need to compare these. Compare them with what? My nursing records. She hurried into another room and returned carrying a binder. I kept copies. You were allowed to, for legal protection. She opened several pages. Look here. She placed Richard's handwritten chart beside her official nursing log. The dates match. I leaned closer. What am I looking at? These mornings? She pointed to 5 separate entries. I documented that Melissa told me she had already given Richard his medication. And Richard wrote, not given. A chill ran through my body. Olivia continued. These records support each other. How? They prove Melissa was the person claiming responsibility. She turned another page. There are more. Several nursing visits carried the same note. Medication administered by family. No nurse witnessed it. I suddenly understood. There was never any proof he actually took them. Exactly. Olivia looked at me. I want to request another document. What document? Richard's medication administration record. I've never heard of that. Every prescription, every refill, every dosage. Can we get it? Yes. She called the home health agency immediately. After several transfers, someone agreed to email copies because I was Richard's surviving spouse. While waiting, Olivia made coffee. Neither of us touched it. An hour later, the records arrived. She printed every page. Then she spread them across the dining room table. This is strange. What? Very strange? She circled several entries with a red pen. The pharmacy kept dispensing his heart medication. Yes. But according to these records, she frowned. His pills should have been running out. They didn't. No. They stayed almost full. I remembered the sealed bottles from the funeral. Richard hadn't imagined anything. Someone really had kept his medicine from him. Olivia continued reading. Then she suddenly froze. Oh, no. What? She handed me another page. This was from his last hospitalization. I scanned it. Lab results, blood work, medication review. Most of it made little sense, until Olivia pointed to one line. Look here. A medication name had been highlighted. Lorazepam. What is that? It's a sedative. I looked back at the report. It says it was found in his blood. Yes. Wasn't it prescribed? Olivia shook her head. No, it isn't on his medication list. I stared at her. How could it be in his system? There are only a few possibilities, such as he took someone else's prescription. Richard would never have done that. He accidentally received the wrong medication. I waited. Or she stopped. Or someone gave it to him. The room became completely silent. I whispered, Melissa. Olivia didn't answer. Instead, she asked, Do you remember anything unusual during Richard's last few months? I closed my eyes. Slowly, the memories returned. Richard sleeping all afternoon. Richard struggling to stay awake during dinner. Richard stumbling in the hallway. Melissa saying, Dad's just tired. Melissa insisting, I already gave him his medicine. Melissa refusing to let me worry. I opened my eyes. He wasn't always like that. Olivia nodded. Exactly. He became confused so quickly. And sedation can do that. My chest tightened. Could it make someone appear to have dementia? Absolutely. My heart skipped. Melissa had spent months telling everyone Richard was becoming confused. What if she had caused the confusion? I suddenly remembered something else. Melissa used to take anxiety medication. Olivia looked up. What kind? I don't know. Can you find out, maybe? After returning home, I searched through old insurance paperwork. Melissa had once accidentally mailed prescription receipts to our address after changing pharmacies. I found the folder in less than 15 minutes. There it was. Lorazepam, the exact medication listed in Richard's hospital report. I stared at the page. Refilled. Again. 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 The refill dates made my stomach turn. Each one matched periods when Richard became noticeably weaker. No. Not exactly. They matched the weeks Melissa repeatedly insisted on handling his medicine alone. I copied every receipt. Then my phone buzzed. Brian. I almost ignored him. Instead, I answered. Hello? Debra. His voice sounded nervous. We need to talk. About what, Melissa? I have nothing to say to her. I'm not calling for her. I waited. I think she's in trouble. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? She's acting differently. How? She barely sleeps. So, she keeps asking me if you found anything. I stayed silent. Debra. What? Did Richard leave something behind? I didn't answer. Brian sighed. I knew it. What do you know? Not much. But Melissa keeps saying everything will be ruined if you find it. My heart raced. What exactly did she say? Brian hesitated. I shouldn't tell you. You called me. I know. So tell me. He lowered his voice. Last night she said... I gripped the phone tighter. If Mom finds out what happened with Dad's medicine, we're finished. Every hair on my arm stood up. I closed my eyes. Brian continued. I asked her what she meant. What did she say? Nothing. Did she explain? No. Did you believe her? I don't know anymore. His voice cracked. I don't know who my wife is. The call ended a few minutes later. I immediately wrote down every word he had said. Then I compared the dates. Melissa's prescription refills. Richard's hospital visits. His sudden episodes of weakness. His notes. Olivia's nursing records. One by one. Every timeline lined up perfectly. Richard wasn't simply dying from heart disease. Someone had been withholding his heart medication, while another drug kept appearing inside his body. I looked at Richard's photograph on the mantel. I'm getting closer. As if answering me, my email notification chimed. The subject line read, Office of the Medical Examiner. My breath caught. I had never contacted them. Someone else had. I opened the email 3 times before I finally understood it. It wasn't from the medical examiner's office itself. It was from an administrative assistant. The subject line read, "Request for case documents." Someone had submitted a formal request to obtain copies of Richard's medical examiner file. The request had been forwarded to me because I was listed as Richard's legal next of kin. I hadn't requested anything. Someone else had. The assistant had written one simple sentence. "Mrs. Nelson, before we release these documents, we need your written authorization because another family member has already requested access." Another family member? There was only one. Melissa. I stared at the screen. Why would she suddenly want Richard's medical records, unless she was worried about what they contained? I immediately called Olivia. "I just got an email." "What happened?" "Melissa requested Richard's medical examiner records." Olivia didn't answer for several seconds. "Debra, what?" "She may be trying to get there before you do." "What do you mean?" "If she knows there's anything damaging, she'll want to see it first." I closed my eyes. "So what do I do?" "You need a lawyer." "I was hoping you wouldn't say that." "You've gone too far to stop now." She was right. This was no longer a family disagreement. It had become something much darker. That afternoon, Helen Morris gave me the number of an attorney she trusted. Her name was Susan Parker. She specialized in elder law estate fraud and financial exploitation. When I called, her receptionist said she had one opening that afternoon. I took it. Susan Parker's office occupied the second floor of an old brick building downtown. She greeted me with a firm handshake. "Mrs. Nelson?" "Please call me Debra." She smiled gently. "Sit down." For nearly 2 hours, I told her everything. Richard's note, the medicine, Olivia's records, the missing money, Lakeview, the forged signatures, the anonymous threat, the recordings. I placed Richard's metal box on her desk. Susan listened without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her hands. "You've done something very important." "What?" "You documented instead of confronting. I wanted proof. And now you have quite a bit." She picked up one bank statement. "Have you reported the missing money?" "No." "Good." I frowned. "Good. If you had gone to the police before gathering this much evidence, they might have viewed it as a family dispute." She opened another folder. "This is different." She made several notes. "First, we secure your property." "How?" "We make copies of everything." She scanned every document immediately. Then she placed the originals into a fireproof safe. "No one gets these." "Not even me. I'll give you certified copies." That made me feel safer than I had in weeks. Next, she opened her computer. "I want to check something." "What?" "The deed to your house." "I already own it." "Let's make sure." She searched county property records. Then her expression changed. "Oh." "What?" She turned the monitor toward me. A legal filing had been recorded 3 weeks earlier. Property transfer into family trust. Trustees Melissa Carter, Brian Carter. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. "My house." Susan nodded. "The paperwork says your home was transferred into a family trust." "I never signed that." "I believe you." My voice shook. "How is that possible?" "We'll look at the signatures." She opened the digital copies. There it was. My name. Supposedly mine. Below it, a notary stamp. Susan zoomed in. "Interesting." "What?" "The notary." She searched another database. "This man is Brian's cousin." I felt sick. So Brian knew. Possibly. She wasn't willing to jump to conclusions. I appreciated that. Can they really take my house? Not if these documents are fraudulent. Susan continued reading. Then she frowned again. There's more. What now? They also prepared guardianship paperwork. I stared at her. I don't understand. She turned another page toward me. Petition for emergency guardianship. The petitioner? Melissa Carter. The proposed protected person? Debra Nelson. My hands became cold. They wanted the court to declare me incompetent. Susan nodded. According to these papers, she read aloud. Mrs. Nelson demonstrates progressive memory loss, financial confusion, impaired judgment, and inability to safely live independently. Every sentence was a lie. I felt tears filling my eyes. They planned all this. Yes. Susan looked at me carefully. And they were close. How close? If the court believed these medical claims, she paused. Melissa would gain authority over your finances? My house? Yes. My medical decisions? Yes. My bank accounts? Yes. My life? Susan answered quietly. Yes. I leaned back in the chair. Richard hadn't exaggerated. Melissa truly intended to erase my independence. Susan reached across the desk. We're going to stop this. How? Step 1. She handed me several forms. I want you to undergo an independent cognitive evaluation. You think I need one? I know you don't. Then why? Because the court won't rely only on your word. I understood immediately. If a neurologist says I'm mentally healthy, it destroys Melissa's story. The evaluation was scheduled for the following morning. It lasted nearly 2 hours. Memory tests, reasoning exercises, problem solving, word recall, financial questions. When it ended, the physician smiled warmly. Mrs. Nelson? Yes. You performed extremely well. So, there is absolutely no indication that you lack decision-making capacity. Relief washed over me. By afternoon, Susan held the official report. She smiled for the first time. This changes everything. She immediately filed objections to the guardianship petition. She also submitted paperwork challenging the property transfer. As we finished signing documents, her office phone rang. She answered. Her expression slowly hardened. When she hung up, she looked directly at me. Melissa just called. My stomach tightened. What did she want? She wanted to know if you'd hired an attorney. What did you tell her? I told her I don't discuss clients. Susan paused. Then she asked something interesting. What? She wanted to know whether anyone had contacted me about Richard's medicine. I felt a chill. She mentioned the medicine. Yes. Susan leaned forward. Debra? Yes. She isn't worried about the money. What do you mean? People who steal money ask about money. I nodded. Melissa keeps asking about one thing. The medicine. Susan closed Richard's folder. Whatever happened to Richard? She looked me directly in the eyes. She believes the answer is hidden inside those pills. Susan Parker told me something that changed the way I thought about every move Melissa made. She isn't acting like a daughter trying to defend herself, Susan said. Then what is she doing? She's acting like someone racing against time. Those words stayed with me all night. The next morning, Susan called before 8. Debra, I need you to stay home today. Why, I think Melissa is about to make her next move. How can you know that? Because we filed objections yesterday. I understood immediately. Melissa now knew she couldn't quietly take my house. She would have to take me. At exactly 10:17 that morning, A white SUV pulled into my driveway. Then another. I looked through the front window. Melissa stepped out first. Behind her came two people wearing county identification badges. My heart dropped. Adult Protective Services. Susan had predicted it perfectly. The doorbell rang. I opened the door before Melissa could knock again. "Mom." Her smile looked warm. Her eyes didn't. The woman beside her introduced herself. "I'm Angela Foster with Adult Protective Services." The man next to her showed his badge. "We received concerns about your safety." Melissa sighed dramatically. "I've been worried sick." I looked directly at her. "No, you haven't." Angela spoke gently. "Mrs. Nelson, would you mind if we came inside?" I stepped aside. "I have nothing to hide." Melissa entered first, almost as if she owned the house already. Angela noticed family photographs on every wall. "You've lived here a long time." 38 years. The man introduced himself as David. "We're just here to make sure you're okay." "I appreciate that." Melissa sat beside them. "I hope Mom understands." "I do," I answered calmly. Angela opened a folder. "We received information that you've been showing signs of memory loss." "I haven't," Melissa interrupted. "She forgets conversations." "No." "She leaves the stove on." "No." "She gets confused paying bills." "No." Every answer came calmly. Susan had warned me, never argue, never lose control. Angela looked around the kitchen. "Mrs. Nelson?" "Yes." "Would you mind if we asked you a few questions?" "Of course." "What day is today?" I answered. "Who's the current president?" I answered. "What did you have for breakfast?" "Oatmeal and coffee?" They continued for several minutes. Simple questions, memory questions, reasoning questions. Melissa became noticeably uncomfortable. Angela smiled politely. "You're doing very well." "I know." Melissa forced a laugh. She has good days." Angela looked at her. "Let's continue." David walked through the house making notes. A few minutes later, he returned holding a frying pan. "This was left on the stove." Melissa immediately spoke. "I told you." I looked at the pan. "It isn't mine." Everyone turned toward me. "I've never seen that pan." Melissa frowned. "What?" "I use cast iron." I opened the cabinet beneath the stove. "My cookware is right here." Angela compared the pan with the rest. It didn't match. Melissa's face tightened for the first time. David continued searching. He found my utility bills sitting unopened on the kitchen counter. "These haven't been paid." Melissa quickly nodded. "Exactly." I smiled. "They arrived yesterday." I picked up the envelopes. "The due dates are next month." Angela checked them herself. She looked at Melissa. "She's correct." Melissa looked away. Strike two. Then David found my car keys inside a bathroom drawer. He looked confused. "Were these misplaced?" I laughed softly. "No. I put them there." "Why?" "Because someone broke into my house last week. I've been changing hiding places." Angela wrote something in her notebook. Melissa suddenly stood. "Mom, this isn't helping." I looked at her. "No. It isn't helping you." The room became quiet. Angela closed her folder. "Mrs. Nelson?" "Yes." "Do you have recent medical records?" "I do." I walked calmly into my office. Susan had prepared everything. I returned carrying a folder. Inside was the neurologist's report. Independent cognitive evaluation. No evidence of dementia. Fully competent. Angela read every page. Then she handed it to David. Melissa looked pale. "This," she pointed toward the report. Must be wrong. The physician specializes in cognitive disorders, I answered. He spent 2 hours evaluating me. Melissa shook her head. She fooled him. Angela looked directly at her. Do you have medical evidence that contradicts this evaluation? Melissa opened her mouth. Nothing came out. David spoke next. We also received information that Mrs. Nelson may be unable to manage her finances. I nodded. I'd like to show you something. I brought out copies of the forged property documents Susan had allowed me to keep. Not the originals, only copies. This signature isn't mine. Angela examined them. Who filed these? My daughter. Melissa stood up so quickly, her chair nearly tipped over. That's a lie. I quietly placed Helen Morris's written statement beside the papers. Then, the neurologist's report. Then Susan's objection filed with the court. Everything in perfect order. Angela looked increasingly serious. Mrs. Carter? Yes. Has an attorney advised you regarding these filings? Melissa hesitated. Angela asked another question. Did your mother authorize this property transfer? Melissa didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me with open anger. You've been talking to people. I finally started listening. For a brief second, I saw something I had never seen in my daughter's eyes before. Hatred. Real hatred. She turned toward Angela. That nurse poisoned Mom against us. Which nurse? Angela asked. Olivia Brooks. What did she do? Melissa struggled for words. Angela waited. She filled Mom's head with conspiracy theories. David wrote another note. We'll speak with Ms. Brooks. Melissa realized she had made a mistake. After nearly an hour, Angela closed her folder. Mrs. Nelson. Yes. Based on what we've seen today? She smiled kindly. We have no reason to believe you're unable to care for yourself. Relief flooded through me. Melissa stared in disbelief. Angela continued. However, she turned toward Melissa. We do have concerns about the property documents. Melissa's face lost all color. As soon as the investigators left, she rounded on me. Are you happy now? No. You've destroyed this family. I looked directly into her eyes. No. You did. She stepped closer. You have no idea what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. You'll regret this. Maybe. She leaned so close I could smell her perfume. You should have given me the medicine. The words escaped before she could stop them. My heart pounded. What did you just say? She froze, then quickly stepped back. I didn't mean... Yes. You did. Melissa turned and walked toward the front door. Before leaving, she looked over her shoulder one last time. You think you've won. She smiled. You haven't even found the most important thing Dad left behind. Then she slammed the door. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room. The medicine wasn't what frightened Melissa most. Richard had hidden something else, something even more dangerous. Melissa's final words echoed through my house long after she drove away. You haven't even found the most important thing Dad left behind. I stood in the middle of the living room replaying every conversation Richard and I had shared during his final months. What could he have hidden the metal box I had already searched it? The workshop. Nothing else was there. His bedroom I'd gone through every drawer. Then I remembered something Susan had said. People who are desperate usually make mistakes. Melissa had made one. She admitted Richard had hidden something beyond the medicine. That meant she had been searching for it too. I called Susan immediately. I think Melissa slipped. What happened? She said I haven't found the most important thing Richard left. Susan became quiet. Interesting. What do you think she meant? I don't know yet. She paused. But if Melissa believes another piece of evidence exists, she'll keep looking. Exactly. So we let her. I frowned. You want me to do nothing? I want you to watch. That afternoon, I returned to my house with a small security company Susan recommended. Within 3 hours, they installed cameras covering every entrance. The technician also added motion alerts directly to my phone. If anyone comes near the house, he explained, you'll know immediately. For the first time in weeks, I felt slightly safer. That feeling lasted less than 24 hours. The next morning, my phone rang. Brian. His voice sounded strained. Debra? What is it? I need to see you. Why, I can't say over the phone? I hesitated. Susan had warned me, never meet alone. I'll only meet in public. Fine. We chose a coffee shop nearly 30 minutes away. Brian arrived wearing yesterday's clothes. He looked exhausted. He sat down without ordering anything. I don't think Melissa knows I'm here. Then why are you... He rubbed both hands across his face. I've been lying to myself. I waited. I kept telling myself Melissa was borrowing money. His eyes filled with tears. I kept believing she'd tell you eventually. You helped her. I know. You notarized documents. I know. His voice broke. I thought your husband had agreed. I stared at him. Did you ever ask Richard? No? Why not? Melissa always had an answer. He lowered his head. I was a coward. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, Brian reached into his backpack. I brought this. He handed me a flash drive. What is it? My cloud backup. I looked at him carefully. Why are you giving me this? Because if I don't... He swallowed hard. I'll spend the rest of my life wondering whether I helped kill a good man. The words hit me like a punch. You really believe that now? He nodded. I've started remembering things. What things? The arguments. He looked out the coffee shop window. Melissa fought with Richard constantly during the last 6 months. About money? Mostly. What else? You. I frowned. Me? She kept saying your generation didn't understand finances. I almost laughed. Richard and I had retired debt-free. Melissa and Brian were drowning in loans. Brian continued. One night she said something that bothered me. What? Mom and Dad don't need all that money anymore. My stomach tightened. I told her that wasn't true. What did she say? It's going to be ours eventually. He closed his eyes. I should have recognized what she was becoming. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Folders appeared, tax returns, scanned documents, bank statements, nothing surprising. Then I opened a folder labeled Personal. Inside were screenshots of text messages, hundreds of them. Most were conversations between Melissa and Brian. One message stopped me cold. Melissa, Dad keeps asking about his heart pills again. Brian, then give them to him. Melissa, not yet. Brian, you're playing with fire. Melissa, you don't understand. If he gets stronger, he'll cancel everything. I looked up. Brian covered his face. I didn't know what she meant. Another message. Brian, you're scaring me. Melissa, relax. He already sleeps most of the day. Another. Brian, what are you giving him? Melissa, just enough to keep him calm. My hands began shaking. I scrolled farther. There were screenshots of online searches. How long can heart patients miss medication? Can skipped heart medication accelerate heart failure? Symptoms of untreated congestive heart failure? Can medication noncompliance look natural? I stopped breathing. Brian whispered, I found those searches after Richard died. Why didn't you tell anyone? I was afraid. Afraid of Melissa. He nodded. And afraid of prison. The coffee between us had gone cold. Brian pushed another folder toward me. I almost deleted everything. Why didn't you? He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Because Richard called me 2 weeks before he died. I froze. He called you? Yes. What did he say? He asked me one question. Brian's voice cracked. Brian, if anything happens to me, will you protect Debra? I closed my eyes. Richard knew, even then. He knew. Brian wiped his eyes. I lied to him. What do you mean? I told him yes. Silence settled between us. I failed him. When we left the coffee shop, Brian stopped beside my car. There's one more thing. What? Melissa has enormous debt. I know about the failed boutique. It's worse than that. How much worse? He laughed bitterly. Almost $300,000. I stared at him. 300,000. Credit cards. Business loans. Personal loans. She hid everything. He handed me another document, a foreclosure notice, addressed to Brian and Melissa. Their house. They were about to lose it. Yes. He looked down. Melissa believed your house would solve everything. As I drove away, one thought became impossible to ignore. Melissa hadn't stolen because she was desperate. She had become desperate because she believed she was entitled to everything Richard and I owned. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Front door camera. I pulled onto the shoulder and opened the live video. Someone stood on my porch, wearing a baseball cap, looking directly into the camera. The man slowly held up an envelope. Then he slipped it beneath my front door. Before leaving, he looked straight into the lens and smiled. The man in the baseball cap was gone by the time I reached my house. The envelope was still waiting beneath the front door. I didn't touch it. Instead, I called Susan. I have another delivery. Don't open it. I wasn't planning to. I'll be there in 15 minutes. When Susan arrived, she wore latex gloves before picking up the envelope. No return address. No stamp. The same as the last one? She carefully opened it. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. No fingerprints were visible. No handwriting. Only typed words. Stop asking questions about Richard's medication. The next funeral will not be his. Susan read the sentence twice. Then she looked at me. This isn't intimidation anymore. What is it? A criminal threat. She placed the paper into a clear evidence bag. I'm taking this directly to the detective assigned to your financial fraud complaint. My financial fraud complaint? She nodded. I filed it yesterday. You never told me. I wanted the paperwork completed first. For the first time in weeks, I felt as though someone else was carrying part of the burden. Susan spent another hour inside my house. She checked every window, every camera, every lock. Before leaving, she turned toward me. Debra? Yes. If anyone contacts you claiming they want to help, call me first. You don't trust anyone anymore. I trust evidence. After she left, I replayed the security footage. The man had parked a block away. He wore gloves, a baseball cap, dark sunglasses, nothing identifiable, except one thing. When he bent down to slide the envelope beneath the door, I caught a glimpse of a tattoo on his left wrist, a small anchor. I froze the frame. Why did it seem familiar? I couldn't remember. Not yet. That evening, Detective Alan Pierce called. His voice was calm and direct. Mrs. Nelson? Yes. My name is Alan Pierce with the County Financial Crimes Unit. Susan told me you might call. I've reviewed the documents she submitted. And they're substantial. I waited. The forged signatures concern me? So does the missing money. We're looking into both. He paused. I also understand there may be issues involving medication. There are. I'd like to meet. The next morning, I carried every copied document Susan had prepared into the detective's office. He spent nearly 2 hours reviewing them. Richard's handwritten notes, the pharmacy records, Olivia's nursing logs, the recordings, Brian's screenshots. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair. This is one of the most organized evidence files I've seen from a private citizen. I had help. You also had patience. He folded his hands. I need to ask something difficult. I'm ready. Why didn't your husband report this? I swallowed. He believed he was protecting me. Detective Pierce nodded slowly. I've seen that before. He pointed toward Richard's medication charts. Your husband documented missed doses. Yes. But documentation alone doesn't prove who withheld them. I know. He tapped another page. The recordings are stronger. Are they enough? They prove control. But they don't yet prove criminal intent. The words stung. So everything I've found still isn't enough. I didn't say that. He slid another document toward me. What I need is independent medical evidence, such as proof that the missing medication actually affected Richard's death. I understood immediately. The medical examiner. Exactly. He continued. If medication was intentionally withheld, he chose his words carefully. And that contributed to his death. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Manslaughter. Maybe worse. Before I left, Detective Pierce stopped me. Mrs. Nelson? Yes. Has your daughter contacted you recently? Almost every day. What does she ask about the medicine? He wrote something in his notebook. Nothing else. Sometimes Richard's notes. Anything hidden. The detective looked thoughtful. That's consistent with what? Someone searching for evidence. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. Debra? You sound excited. I remembered something. What? It happened during Richard's final hospital stay. I immediately turned the car toward her house. She met me at the door carrying an old notebook. I kept personal notes after difficult patients. She flipped through several pages. Here. The page was dated 9 days before Richard died. Olivia read aloud. Patient, unusually drowsy. I remembered that day. He barely opened his eyes. She nodded. Listen to the next line. She continued reading. Daughter refused medication review. I looked at her. What does that mean? The hospital physician wanted to compare every medication Richard had been taking. And Melissa interrupted. What did she say? Olivia didn't need to read. She remembered. Everything he's taking is already in the chart. But it wasn't. No, the sedative wasn't listed. Exactly. I suddenly understood. Melissa had stopped the doctor from discovering the extra medication. Olivia pointed to another line. I wrote something else. She read quietly. Daughter insists on administering pills herself. I stared at the notebook. Even in the hospital? Yes. Was she allowed? Not officially. Then how? She waited until nurses were busy. The room fell silent. I whispered, she never wanted anyone to see what Richard was taking. Olivia nodded. I think you're right. As I prepared to leave, she hesitated. There is one more thing. What? I never told anyone because I wasn't certain. I waited. The morning before Richard died, her eyes filled with tears. He asked me for a pen. What did he write? I don't know. He folded the paper before I could see it. My heart raced. What happened to it? He asked another nurse to place it in a sealed envelope. Who? Olivia frowned. I can't remember. Where did the envelope go? I don't know. She looked frustrated. I've tried remembering for days. As I drove away, I couldn't stop thinking about that missing envelope. Richard had already left me a note. He had left the metal box, the recordings, the documents. Could he really have left one final message? When I reached home, Detective Pierce's voicemail was waiting. Mrs. Nelson, call me immediately. My pulse quickened. I returned the call. He answered on the first ring. We found something. What? The hospital security archive. I gripped the phone tighter. What about it? We recovered hallway footage from the day before Richard died. My heart pounded. Does it show Melissa? Yes. He paused. And she's carrying something we can't explain. I arrived at Detective Pierce's office less than 30 minutes later. He already had the hospital security footage paused on a large monitor. Susan Parker was sitting beside him. Neither of them smiled. Sit down, Debra, Susan said softly. I obeyed. Detective Pierce pressed play. The timestamp showed 8:42 p.m. The hallway outside Richard's hospital room appeared quiet. A nurse walked past. A housekeeping cart rolled by. Then Melissa entered the frame. She looked over both shoulders before stepping into Richard's room. Nothing unusual yet, I whispered. The detective nodded. Keep watching. Melissa remained inside for almost 12 minutes, longer than I remembered. When she finally stepped into the hallway again, she wasn't carrying the same things. She entered with only her purse. She left carrying a large manila envelope tucked beneath her coat. My heart started racing. The envelope. Exactly, Detective Pierce said. Olivia had told me Richard asked for a pen. He had written something. Another nurse had sealed it inside an envelope. Now I was watching Melissa leave the hospital carrying one. The detective froze the image. Notice something else. He zoomed in. Melissa's left hand held the envelope tightly. Her right hand carried a small white pharmacy bag. The same type of bag Olivia had handed me at Richard's funeral. I covered my mouth. The medicine? We believe so. Susan leaned forward. Do you remember seeing Melissa with that bag? No. I don't either. The detective resumed the video. Melissa walked toward the elevators. Halfway there, another person entered the frame. Brian. He appeared surprised to see her. The footage had no audio, but we could clearly see them arguing. Melissa shook her head repeatedly. Brian pointed toward the envelope. She pulled it closer to her chest. Then she stormed away. Brian remained standing in the hallway, watching her leave. The detective stopped the video again. We interviewed Brian yesterday. My head turned. You already spoke to him after he contacted us. I felt relieved. What did he say? He confirmed there was an argument. About what? The envelope. Brian had asked Melissa where she got it. She refused to answer. Instead, she told him to mind his own business. Then she hid it inside her coat before leaving the hospital. I whispered, So Richard really left something. The detective nodded. We believe he did. But Melissa took it. That's our current theory. Susan asked the next question. Did the hospital keep records of outgoing patient property? The detective smiled slightly. They did. He handed us another file. Property inventory. Richard Nelson. Wallet. Wedding ring. Eyeglasses. Bible. No envelope. Someone had removed it before the inventory was completed. Susan slowly exhaled. That's significant. The detective nodded. Very. He opened another folder. We also located the nurse who sealed the envelope. My heart pounded. She remembers enough. He played an audio recording from yesterday's interview. The nurse's voice sounded uncertain. I don't remember what Mr. Nelson wrote, but I remember he asked me to seal it. Did he say who should receive it? Yes. She paused. He said, the detective fast-forwarded slightly. Give this only to my wife. My eyes filled with tears. Richard had tried one last time, one last effort to reach me, but he never got the chance. The recording continued. I placed the envelope inside the bedside cabinet. Did you later remove it? No. Who did? I don't know. The interview ended. The detective folded his hands. The timeline fits. The nurse left. Melissa entered. The envelope disappeared. I closed my eyes. Can she be charged for that? Not by itself, but it supports the larger pattern. Susan nodded. Every piece strengthens the next. The detective then surprised both of us. We found something else. What now? He pulled out enlarged photographs, still images from another security camera. The hospital parking garage. Melissa stood beside her SUV. She looked around carefully. Then she opened the manila envelope. Several sheets of paper came out. Instead of reading them, she fed them into a portable paper shredder sitting inside her vehicle. I couldn't breathe. Richard's final message. Destroyed. Frame by frame, we watched tiny strips of paper fall into a trash bag. I whispered, she shredded it. The detective answered quietly. Yes. Susan asked, did she destroy everything? Apparently not. He zoomed in again. Before feeding the papers into the shredder, Melissa removed one small folded sheet. She slipped that single page into her purse, then shredded everything else. My pulse quickened. She kept one page. The detective nodded. We don't know why. Neither did I, but Melissa clearly believed that one page mattered. After leaving the detective's office, Susan and I sat in silence inside her car. Finally, she spoke. I think we're close. So do I. Too close. She looked worried. I don't like that. Why? Because desperate people become reckless. Almost as if proving her right, my phone rang. Melissa. I looked at Susan. She nodded once. Answer. I placed the call on speaker. Hello. Melissa sounded strangely calm. Mom. What do you want? I've been thinking. I doubt that. She ignored the comment. I don't want us fighting anymore. Neither Susan nor I spoke. I'd like to meet. No. Please. No. You don't even know why. I don't need to. Melissa sighed. I found something Dad wanted you to have. Susan's eyes met mine immediately. The missing page. I answered carefully. What is it? I'll only give it to you in person. Susan quietly shook her head. I understood. No. Melissa's voice hardened. Then you'll never know what he wrote. The line went silent for several seconds. Finally, she whispered, He told me something before he died. I gripped the phone tighter. What? He said. She stopped. He forgave me. Then she hung up. Susan immediately looked at me. She lied. How do you know? Because if Richard had truly forgiven her, she started the engine. She wouldn't be trying so hard to convince you. The courthouse felt colder than any hospital room I had entered during Richard's illness. Maybe it was the polished stone floors. Maybe it was the silence. Or maybe it was because after months of collecting evidence, everything now depended on what happened inside one courtroom. Susan Parker walked beside me carrying 3 thick binders. She smiled gently. "We're ready." I hope Richard was right. He was. She squeezed my arm. He trusted the right person. Across the hallway, Melissa stood with her attorney. She wore a navy blue suit and a calm expression, but I noticed something different. She kept looking toward the courtroom doors, then toward the elevators, then back again. She wasn't confident. She was waiting. Brian arrived 5 minutes before the hearing began. He didn't stand beside Melissa. He walked directly toward Susan and me. Melissa saw him. Her face changed instantly. "Brian," he stopped, but didn't turn around. "Brian!" Her voice echoed through the hallway. He slowly faced her. "I'm done lying." For several seconds, no one spoke. Melissa whispered, "Don't do this." Brian answered quietly, "I should have stopped you a year ago." The courtroom doors opened. The bailiff called our case. Inside, every seat behind us was occupied. Detective Pierce, Olivia Brooks, Helen Morris, the hospital nurse who had sealed Richard's envelope, 2 investigators from Adult Protective Services, even the retired pharmacist who had verified Richard's prescription history. I suddenly realized something. Richard wasn't alone anymore. Neither was I. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began with the guardianship petition Melissa had filed against me. Her attorney spoke first. He argued that Melissa had only been trying to protect an aging parent who had become vulnerable after losing her husband. Susan stood calmly. Then she presented the neurologist's evaluation. Independent, comprehensive, clear, no dementia, no cognitive impairment. The judge read every page, then looked directly at Melissa. "Do you possess any medical evidence contradicting this report?" Her attorney hesitated. "No, Your Honor." The judge made one note. "The guardianship petition is denied." I closed my eyes. One battle was over. Then came the property transfer. Susan placed the deed on the evidence table. Next to it, she placed verified signatures from our bank. Then Helen Morris testified. I rejected similar documents months earlier because the signatures were inconsistent. Melissa's attorney questioned her expertise. Helen remained calm. "I reviewed signatures for 32 years. I know the difference between authentic writing and traced writing." The judge nodded thoughtfully. Next came Detective Pierce. He explained the financial investigation. $86,000 transferred. Unauthorized online banking access. Payments toward Melissa's personal debts. No written permission from Richard or me. Melissa's attorney insisted the transfers were gifts. Detective Pierce simply replied, "Then why were they hidden?" No answer came. Brian testified next. He looked directly at the judge. "I signed documents I believed were legitimate. Were they?" "No." "Who told you they were legitimate?" "My wife." The courtroom became silent. Brian continued. "I asked Melissa whether Richard had agreed." "What did she say?" "She told me everything had already been approved." "Did you verify that?" "No." "Why not?" "I trusted her." His voice broke. "I shouldn't have." Then Susan called Olivia Brooks. She described Richard's medication schedule, the untouched heart pills. Melissa insisting she had already administered medication. The nursing logs. The recordings. Melissa stared at the table throughout Olivia's testimony. She never looked up. Then came the moment none of us expected. Detective Pierce asked permission to present newly recovered surveillance footage. The judge agreed. The courtroom lights dimmed. The hospital hallway appeared on the large screen. Everyone watched Melissa enter Richard's room. Everyone watched her leave carrying the manila envelope. Everyone watched her argue with Brian. Then the parking garage footage appeared, Melissa removing papers from the envelope, feeding them into the portable shredder, keeping one folded page. The lights came back on. The judge looked directly at Melissa. "Can you explain this?" Her attorney whispered something urgently. Melissa slowly stood. It contained private family matters. The judge asked another question. "Why destroy it?" She hesitated. "It wasn't important." Susan stood immediately. "If it wasn't important..." She pointed toward the screen. Why keep one page?" Melissa had no answer. The judge ordered a short recess. During the break, Susan leaned toward me. "She's cracking. I can see it. Stay calm." When court resumed, Detective Pierce made one final request. "Your Honor?" He held up a clear evidence bag. "We recovered shredded paper fragments from hospital waste retained for unrelated legal preservation." I stared at him. "You found them?" He nodded, almost imperceptibly. A forensic laboratory had reconstructed portions of the destroyed document. Not all of it, but enough. The judge allowed the reconstructed pages into evidence. Susan read the surviving sentences aloud. "Debra, if you are reading this, Melissa has been taking my medicine. She says she will control everything after I'm gone. Please believe Olivia. Protect yourself. Forgive Brian. He doesn't know everything." I couldn't stop crying. Richard's final words had survived. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to tell the truth. Melissa suddenly stood. "That's incomplete." Her voice echoed through the courtroom. "It doesn't prove anything." Susan answered immediately. "It proves Richard tried to warn his wife." Melissa shook her head violently. "He was confused." Olivia quietly spoke from the witness stand. "He wasn't confused. He was frightened." Melissa slammed both hands onto the table. "No." Everyone turned. She looked around wildly. "You don't understand?" The judge raised his voice. "Mrs. Carter." She ignored him. "I was trying to fix everything." Her breathing became uneven. "The debts." She covered her face. "I couldn't lose everything." Susan asked softly, "So you decided your parents should..." Melissa looked up. For the first time, there was no anger left. Only exhaustion. She whispered, "I never meant for Dad to die." The courtroom fell completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Detective Pierce slowly stood. "Your Honor?" He looked toward the judge. "I request the record reflect the witness's statement." The judge nodded. "So ordered." Melissa realized what she had just said. She slowly backed away from the witness stand. Her attorney buried his face in his hands, and I finally understood. Richard had spent his final months gathering evidence. I had spent mine finding it. But in the end, the words that changed everything came from Melissa herself. Melissa's words hung in the courtroom long after the hearing ended. "I never meant for Dad to die." No one forgot them. Not the judge. Not Detective Pierce. Not me. Within an hour, the civil hearing had become something much larger. Detective Pierce approached Melissa before she reached the courthouse exit. 2 uniformed deputies stood beside him. "Melissa Carter." She slowly turned. "I need you to come with us." Her attorney stepped forward. "On what grounds?" Detective Pierce answered calmly. "Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Forgery. Evidence tampering. He paused. And we are reopening the investigation into Richard Nelson's death. Melissa's face went completely white. You can't do that. We already did. She looked desperately toward Brian. He lowered his eyes. She looked toward me. For the first time in months, she didn't look angry. She looked frightened. The deputies escorted her away. I watched until the courthouse doors closed behind her. Only then did I finally breathe. 3 weeks later, the criminal proceedings began. This courtroom felt different. Larger, more serious. A jury filled the box. Reporters occupied the back row. Richard's story was no longer just a family tragedy. It had become a criminal case. The prosecutor began by outlining the evidence. Richard's medication records, the untouched prescription bottles, Olivia's testimony, hospital surveillance, financial fraud, destroyed documents, threatening letters. The reconstructed final note, every piece connected, one after another, like stones forming a path. Melissa no longer looked composed. She had lost weight. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. She rarely looked toward the jury. Instead, she stared at the defense table. Brian testified first. His voice shook. I loved my wife. The prosecutor nodded. I believe you. That's why this is so difficult, Brian admitted, helping with paperwork. He admitted ignoring warning signs. He admitted choosing convenience over truth. Then he looked directly toward the jury. I should have listened to Richard. Silence filled the room. Olivia testified next. She remained calm, professional. She explained how medication should have been administered, how pill counts never changed, how Richard repeatedly asked for medicine he never received. The prosecutor played the recordings. Richard's weak voice echoed across the courtroom. Where are my heart pills? Melissa's recorded answer followed. You'll take what I give you. Several jurors visibly reacted. One woman quietly wiped away tears. Then Detective Pierce presented the surveillance footage. Melissa removing the envelope. Melissa shredding Richard's final letter. Melissa hiding one page. The prosecutor asked one simple question. Mrs. Carter. He faced her directly. If your father forgave you, he paused. Why destroy his final message to your mother? Melissa couldn't answer. Instead, her attorney called their only medical expert. The defense claimed Richard's heart disease alone explained his death. The prosecutor remained calm. Then he called the medical examiner. Dr. Elaine Turner walked to the witness stand. She had reviewed Richard's original records, the hospital files, the toxicology results, the newly discovered medication history. The prosecutor asked, Doctor, based on your review, did the missing heart medication matter? Yes. How? It significantly increased Mr. Nelson's risk of heart failure. What about the sedative found in his blood? It likely worsened his condition. Could these two factors together accelerate death? Yes. The courtroom became completely silent. The prosecutor asked one final question. In your medical opinion, was Mr. Nelson deprived of treatment that could have prolonged his life? Dr. Turner answered without hesitation. Yes. I closed my eyes. Richard finally had someone speaking for him. Melissa took the stand the following afternoon. She insisted she had only wanted to help. She claimed Richard often refused medication. The prosecutor immediately held up Richard's handwritten charts. He documented every missed dose. Melissa shook her head. He was confused. Then came Olivia's nursing records. Melissa looked away. Then Brian's text messages. She swallowed hard. Then the prosecutor displayed her internet searches. How long can heart patients miss medication symptoms of untreated heart failure? Medication noncompliance? The prosecutor spoke quietly. You searched these topics before Richard died. No. The records say otherwise. Melissa's breathing became faster. You also searched whether untreated heart failure appears natural. She whispered. I was curious. The prosecutor walked slowly toward the jury. No further questions. Closing arguments lasted only one day. Susan sat beside me even though the prosecutor handled the case. She whispered, Whatever happens, you kept your promise. I nodded. I found the truth. The jury deliberated for nearly 7 hours. Every minute felt endless. When they finally returned, no one spoke. The foreperson stood. The judge asked, Has the jury reached a verdict? Yes. My heart pounded so loudly I barely heard the next words. On the charge of financial exploitation, guilty. Melissa lowered her head. On the charge of forgery, guilty. She closed her eyes. On the charge of evidence tampering, guilty. The judge continued reading. Then came the final count. The jury had not convicted Melissa of intentional murder, but they found her guilty of criminally negligent homicide for intentionally withholding essential medication while exerting control over Richard's care, resulting in his death. The courtroom remained silent. Melissa quietly began crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following week. When that day arrived, many of the same people returned. Before imposing sentence, the judge looked directly at Melissa. You exploited the trust of 2 parents who loved you. You manipulated medical care. You forged legal documents. You attempted to strip your mother of her independence. He paused. And when your father tried to leave the truth behind, you destroyed it. The judge sentenced her to years in state prison along with restitution for the stolen money and permanent cancellation of every fraudulent property filing. As deputies placed handcuffs on her wrists, Melissa turned toward me one final time. She whispered, I'm sorry. I looked at her quietly. I wish you had been. Then she disappeared through the courtroom doors. For the first time since Richard's funeral, the truth walked out with her, and the fear left with it. 3 months after Melissa was sentenced, I walked into Richard's workshop for the first time without crying. The morning sunlight slipped through the old windows. Tiny particles of sawdust floated in the air. For a moment, it felt as though Richard had simply stepped outside for another cup of coffee. His tools still hung exactly where he had left them. His favorite hammer remained above the workbench. The loose floorboard had been repaired. The metal lockbox now rested safely inside my home. I ran my fingers across the wooden bench. I kept my promise. The room stayed silent, but somehow, it didn't feel empty anymore. The court eventually returned every dollar investigators could recover. Not all of the money. Some had already been spent. Some had disappeared forever. That no longer mattered as much as I once thought. My house remained mine. Richard's name remained on the memories that filled every room. No one would ever force me into a nursing facility. No one would ever convince me I was losing my mind again. That victory meant more than money. Susan Parker visited often during those first months. Not because she had to, because she became my friend. One afternoon, we sat on the back porch drinking iced tea. She smiled. You know, what? You've changed. I hope that's a good thing. It is. How? The first day we met, she laughed softly. You apologized before every sentence. I smiled. I probably did. Now you don't. She was right. Somewhere between Richard's funeral and Melissa's conviction, I had stopped apologizing for telling the truth. Olivia Brooks visited every Sunday. She always brought flowers. Sometimes we spoke about Richard, sometimes we didn't. One afternoon, she admitted something. I carried guilt for a long time. Why, I thought I should have done more. I reached across the table and took her hand. You gave Richard hope. I couldn't save him. No. But you saved me. Her eyes filled with tears. Without Olivia, I never would have opened that pharmacy bag. Without her courage, Richard's voice might have disappeared forever. Brian wrote me several letters from another town. He sold the house he had shared with Melissa. He filed for divorce. He entered counseling. His first letter ended with one sentence. I hope one day I become the man Richard believed I could be. I didn't answer immediately. Months later, I finally wrote back. People who tell the truth still have a future. Never waste yours. I never heard from him again. Sometimes silence is its own ending. The workshop slowly became my favorite place once more. I began finishing the birdhouse Richard never completed. It took me 3 weekends. It leaned slightly to one side. The roof wasn't perfectly straight. Richard would have smiled. I placed it beneath the old oak tree in our backyard. Within 2 days, bluebirds moved inside. Life had returned. One morning, I received an unexpected phone call from Detective Pierce. Mrs. Nelson? Hello, Detective. I thought you'd like to know. What? The prosecutor asked me to thank you. For what? Your organization. I laughed. My organization? Most investigations begin with almost nothing. He paused. Richard left clues. You found them? I looked toward the workshop window. No. We found them. He agreed. That's true. Before hanging up, he said something I never forgot. Justice rarely begins in a courtroom. It usually begins when one ordinary person refuses to stop asking questions. After that call, I opened Richard's final reconstructed letter again. The paper remained fragile. The missing words would never return, but the surviving ones were enough. Protect yourself. Believe Olivia. Forgive Brian. I finally understood why Richard had written those last 3 words. Not because Brian deserved forgiveness, because I deserved peace. Forgiveness did not erase what happened. It simply meant I no longer wanted anger deciding the rest of my life. One autumn afternoon, I visited Richard's grave alone. The cemetery looked completely different from the day of his funeral. The fear was gone. The confusion was gone. Only love remained. I knelt beside the headstone. I finally know everything. A cool breeze moved through the trees. I wish you could have stayed. I smiled through tears. But you never really left. I placed the finished birdhouse beside his flowers, just for a photograph. Then I carried it home again. Richard would have laughed at that. As I turned to leave, another older woman approached the grave beside his. She looked at me kindly. Were you close? I smiled. He was my husband. She nodded. I lost mine too. We stood together quietly. Then she asked, Does it ever get easier? I thought carefully before answering. The missing never gets smaller. But your life slowly grows around it. She smiled through tears. I needed to hear that. So did I. When I returned home that evening, I unlocked the front door without fear. No hidden threats waited inside. No mysterious envelopes. No lies. Only photographs. Memories. Peace. I made myself a cup of tea, sat beside the living room window. and watched the birds settle into Richard's birdhouse. For the first time in many months, the house sounded alive again. If there's one thing this journey taught me, it's this: love is not proven by how loudly someone says they care. Love is proven by what they do when no one is watching. Richard protected me until his very last breath. Olivia risked her career to tell the truth. Susan refused to let forged papers steal my future. Brian finally chose honesty over fear. And I learned that even after unimaginable betrayal, a broken heart can still choose courage. If you've stayed with me until the end of this story, thank you. Please leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if this story reminded you to trust your instincts, cherish the people who truly protect you, or never ignore the quiet voice that says something isn't right, I'd love to hear that too. Take care of yourself, and never be afraid to ask one more question. Sometimes, it changes everything. Looking back, I don't believe this story is only about betrayal. It's about paying attention when something doesn't feel right, even if the truth is painful. It's about understanding that love is measured by actions, not words. Richard couldn't protect me forever, but he left me the courage to protect myself. I also learned that asking difficult questions is never wrong. Sometimes one unanswered question can hide years of manipulation, while one brave question can uncover the truth. Most importantly, I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means refusing to let someone else's choices control the rest of your life. If my story helps even one person trust their instincts, protect someone they love, or recognize the warning signs before it's too late, then Richard's final gift reached exactly where it was meant to go. Call to action. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss future stories like this. And I'd truly love to hear from you in the comments. What would you have done if you were standing in my shoes? Also tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I read as many of your comments as I can, and hearing your thoughts means more to me than you know. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care of yourself and the people who truly deserve your trust.